had the special privilege of being able to chat with teams all across the U.S., and all over the world actually to help them pass policy. But what's really wonderful is I get to meet people from all over and hear their stories and hear their perspectives and really share with them in sort of the beauty of these entheogenic spaces. So if you would like to get some policy passed in your local area, please reach out to us. You can find us at decriminalizenature.org, and we have a whole process you can go through. We give you a little orientation. We have some information for you. And now I think 29 cities across the U.S. have passed, so this is quite a movement. So hop aboard and join the fun. I'd like to introduce also our behind the scenes master, Rachel, who's done such an incredible job with helping us out. We're now on season 2, I believe, of this incredible podcast. So thank you, Rachel, for all your help making this come to life. Rachel is also posting these episodes, not just here on Rumble and Odysseys. We're doing live and on YouTube Live, but also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and iHeartRadio, etc. So I know that's a lot of work on the backside. So again, thank you, Rachel, for keeping it alive for us and making sure that we have some incredible shows out there for everybody. If you would like to make a donation to help support this amazing movement and show, please, you can do that on the podcast platforms by clicking the donate button, or you can go to our website as well. At the end, Rachel will be also gathering any questions or comments you have. So if you have any thoughts or anything on this podcast, please go ahead and put them in the comment box. And when we get towards the end here, Rachel will wrap them up for us and give us an opportunity to share a little bit about that. So thank you, Rachel, for being here. Really excited today. Have our guest today is Savanna Strega. She's from Homer, Alaska. So we have an incredible team going on up there, and really beautiful again to see some of the amazing movement going on out there. I met Savanna at the Olympic Peninsula Fungi Festival actually in Washington, and we were just kind of chatting and like, hey, I think I know somebody that knows, just kind of had that weird connection moment. So it was really,
Yeah.
really great to meet you and connect and really see kind of the incredible work you're doing. So thank you for being here today. I'm really excited for this conversation. Happy Mother's Day. Thank you for spending a little bit of your Mother's Day to come out here and share with us.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
yeah, thank you for being. So how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. I am enjoying a slow weekend in a busy life. It's good to take a break, a little bit of a break and a pause. Homer, it during summer, Homer is like you go super fast, like right into like we were just talking before in our intro. Like one day it might be snowing, and the next day it looks like this, and you're in the garden, digging in the garden, planting the plants, and getting everything ready for the short growing season. So
Yeah.
it's been really nice to pause and working on my doctoral program and being in an intensive space and doing a lot of coordinating has been just like super go 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 for me. And so I'm grateful for this opportunity. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it looks
Yeah.
like it's a beautiful day out there in Alaska today. Chat a little bit about it. What a amazing space in terms of like the connection to nature. You just really feel it. It's so I'm going to be going in August, I believe.
In
So
August,
yeah,
yes.
the Arctic sessions or
Visions.
something like that. Visions
Audit
Arctic.
visions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hopefully I'll see you there. If not, I'm excited to go there for my first time. And just everyone I've heard about Alaska has just been like, wow, it's just this amazing place of wildlife and just raw earth, and you just feel the nature all around you. You really are in it.
Yeah, talk about being able to root for sure. I mean, I traveled for a really long time and I was homeless, houseless for a long time, like for like 15 years. And I've been here for 13 years and I just never had met a place like Alaska. And to be able to like soften and actually spread and root into a place, it has been just such a privilege. And with that, I'd love to do like a land acknowledgement. I'm on the land of the Dena'ina and the Supiaq people, and the Ninilchik Tribal Council stewards the land here. And so moving here as a transplant has been a huge privilege and opportunity for me, and that I don't take for granted. So
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing.
yeah.
So maybe we could start off with a little background bio. Maybe tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got interested in this area, and then we'll go from there.
Um, okay. Well, I am I'm a parent, a partner. I traveled for a long time. I think I've really been interested in I've been practicing and interested in herbal medicine in general for like 20 years. I was diagnosed with endometriosis really early on in my life. And I actually, like 20 years ago, had a really progressive doctor. And we had tried traditional, like not traditional, but like allopathic medicine. And it didn't really work for me. And so he really supported me in exploring natural medicine, like plants and herbs. And naturally occurring hormones. And so that kind of sparked my interest in earth-based medicine, right? Very early on. I'm 41. So that was over 20 years ago now. Um, and over the course of the last like 5 or 6 years, 8 years ago, I got my bachelor's degree in psych, and I've worked in early education and moving into mental health and trying to really spend my time in service to humanity in this way of like really nourishing health and wellness, mind, body, spirit. And so I came across Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. And then I saw some of your work like featured on Netflix and got really interested in just what was it, 3 or 4 years ago that we met now?
Yeah, maybe even two, yeah, 2.5, 3 years, something like that. Yeah, it's been a while.
So I had learned about Decrim Nature and I was like, oh, cool, let me see if anything's happening in Alaska. And so there was like a seed and a sprout happening here in Alaska, and connected with some of those folks. And they're like, yeah, we're going to meet with Larry Norris in a month or something. And then I was going to travel and I just went down to the Olympic Peninsula Fungi Festival, and there you were. And here I am now. We have a team here, like a really super supportive, wonderful team. And in the last couple of years, we've done a lot of networking and a lot of connection building. And what I'm really realizing is that I feel like I'm up against, Western society models of like, go, 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 get it done, and living in Alaska. And also, then I also go to school in Hawaii. So I go back and forth. Like, really, what we're talking about is like taking the time to build the relationships. And that's where we are right now, kind of pacing ourselves and really building those relationships and nourishing those connections. And that's been really wonderful. And so that's how I got here. And there's so much more to learn and still so much more to do. And we're just taking it one pace at a time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's one thing. I spent some time living in Hawaii for about 11 years, and just the pace is totally different. You just have to be okay with being in tune, feeling the rhythms of the earth.
Hmm.
Really, it's like the waves come in, they come out, they're crashing, they're always there, they're consistent. Consistency
Hmm.
is key, but like the timing might be a little bit off, and you have to be okay with just being in the moment, which is great. So especially in Hawaii, you see like the way people wait in lines, everyone's hanging outside, and you see the slippers at the doorway, sometimes has the next slippers up. So, and then everyone's
Yeah,
outside just enjoying the outdoors. So,
right.
it's just a totally different sort of mental space to be in, especially in the US.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well, what,
totally. Totally. Um, and so that's been really rich for me. And in like at this time in my life, like, um, coming out from and recover, like building my life after kind of a whole upheavals, like having a child and experiencing acute, tragedy. In my younger years, I definitely recreationally participated with like hallucinogens. And I know now that my experience with fungus specifically was actually exactly what I needed for that time, because that was another kind of whole upheaval time for me and changed the whole trajectory of my youth essentially. And so I kind of returned to um, entheogens over the last few years. And wow, will I never use them recreationally again?
mhm,
Like the ceremonial element of and being like really tuning into the connection and making a really intentional choice about entheogens as medicine, as spiritual growth, as a facilitator of like introspection and really understanding, what you're in charge of, what you are in control of, which is very little,
mhm,
has been really so super liberating to me. And so, yeah, I'm loving this whole amalgamation of like pacing and, slowing down and really building into connection. So, really, again, like I'll just say, give my appreciation for being here in this like restorative way and like restoring our roots, because I just think entheogens have such a powerful impact on doing just that,
mhm.
right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. They force you almost to connect with that deeper sense of self, a deeper sense of, what's around you, sort of the feel of the energy around you. And, if you kind of, even the experience itself, if you push too hard, or if you're too tense, or if you aren't like open to what potentially could come in front of you, then oftentimes
Hmm.
get like, put through the ringer there. And
Yeah.
And so it's definitely teaches you quite, through experiential knowledge, not just through
Yeah.
book knowledge. It's like, okay, I know because I've seen that, when you
Yeah.
say you obviously, I think probably a lot of us, probably most everyone on this call, and probably a lot of people out there as well, have come into these works through maybe a recreational lens initially.
Hmm.
Because, when you're a kid, you don't really understand all this other stuff, what are people talking about. But then, I always say sometimes you can be on the dance floor and get slapped upside the head with spirit and be like, oh, what's
Yeah.
going on here, right? Not that dancing isn't necessarily, spiritual in and of itself, but
Mhm.
can you in your recreational time frame, were there any kind of insights that kind of came through that you find are still relevant today as you do more of the ceremonial work, or do you really see it as two separate experiences?
Hmm. Um, Dang, I don't really know necessarily how to answer that question. Except for that, I think presence, right? It's like like you're saying, it's like if you have any kind of resistance when you're in the moment, like that's then maybe what causes the friction, or like it's almost, yeah, I don't know. It might be not have words for it per se.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, you came back to it, so there must have been something in those initial experiences that were you're at least interested enough in that you're like, hey, I might want to revisit this again.
yeah, I I'm actually can't remember if my more recent experience brought me to the aha moment of how I think that over the years, what I've learned about the nature of entheogenic experiences, right? Like, and also spiritual growth, because there was more so an initiation for me to explore my own ancestral roots and my own nature-based like interconnectedness to nature. There was kind of that before there was entheogens again. And I think that I personally felt like I needed to do that before I could revisit that experience. I actually know that that's probably the most true thing for me, is that like getting into um, the vision work, getting into the sensation of literally just being, not doing, not pushing, not trying to fix, not trying to explain why. All of these, like the last like 6 or 7 years of meditation practices, visualization practices, I think kind of supported me when I went back to ceremony with entheogens in holding and being really sovereign with the medicine versus entering with any kind of fear. I mean, I also had an amazing facilitator and an amazing group of people, like, um, so that was really helpful too. So I can't remember if this experience helped me understand that one, or if it was all kind of a collection of things. Like, um I had taken acid, like LSD, a lot recreationally, and really had a good relationship with that as a young person, and I really did that really did help me understand how interconnected, like,
Mhm.
acid was a really telling, really mind-opening thing for me really early on. So that was great. My relationship with psilocybin wasn't that way. The first time I ever took it, I was at a big event and it was really scary for me. And
Mhm.
I got really panicked and I didn't have good support. And so it felt um, really, really intense. And so that's kind of what put me astray for a really long time, like 16 or so years. I was like, oh, I'm never doing that again. I can't ever. And that was my story. I was like attached to the story of like, I can never do it again. I'll
Mhm.
never do it again because I never, maybe what if I won't come back? And so it really took me like some preparatory work to be brave enough to get there. And now what I understand is that that bad experience that I had, the fear that I had, really was actually inspired by what was going on. Like, I was with a friend and they left when I started to go into my experience. And it really opened up for me a lot of the ways that I, had felt abandoned in my life. And so I understand that now. So I think there was a level of maturity, like the reflection, and there's like a level of maturity that I have now that I didn't have then.
Mhm.
Um, which I think is kind of important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, how important it is too to have a good community of folks around you if you're going to be exploring this. At least knowing somebody that just make some ground rules ahead of time, like, hey, everybody, we're going to we're going to be together here through this, or
Yeah.
help each other out or whatever. Or if not, being really okay with like, okay, I can be solo style here and be okay with it. But your first time doing it like that, I imagine would be tricky, especially in that kind of big environment. It seems sometimes like LSD is almost better in those types of environments, and mushrooms are kind of like this kind of go inward. You kind of like sort of decompose stuff a little bit. You see stuff that maybe is a little bit more difficult or challenging, but good for the healing process.
Yeah, totally, totally. It was like that impulsive naivety of like youth, right? That I was just like, okay, this is fine. I have no idea. And I appreciate that I was able to, I've been able to build a relationship and have a level of reverence for this medicine because it is like we are talking about, uh, this is like what we humans that puts humans in check. I mean,
Right.
truly, right?
Yeah.
Um, Getting into the semantics of like, interpersonal relationship stuff, like, even your partner couldn't tell you, hey, maybe you should consider this, but like do a ceremony of mushrooms and you're like, oh, I need to spend time with that area. Like I can do
Right.
better there,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah, I had a friend of mine that would always say, when you're with a therapist, you can edit. With the mushroom, there's
Mhm.
no editing. It's going to be right there in front of you, you know. So
Yes.
you got to see, you got to be all right with seeing all the stuff without any kind of like cherry picking or any kind of like sweetening over. It's like it's going to be the raw you, and only you,
Yes.
the experience is experiencing it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so it sounds like you also went through some process of doing some searching of your ancestral roots and ancestral practices. I know there's so many people that are so far removed from their ancestors. Tell us a little bit about that process. Like, what did you find, and what kind of ways did you what kind of ways did you search? Because I know there were probably other people out there who are also independently trying to search their ancestral roots. And is there techniques?
Mhm.
Is there something are you tapping into dreams? Are you doing more sort of genealogy stuff? Are you looking into sort of areas you're coming from and like looking at lore and mythology? That's kind of what I do. My ancestors are from Finland, and so I had this like deep sort of now that I know that I can kind of like look into these different aspects and kind of explore. But what was your process in that?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. That is such a big question, right? Like that is such a it's a big deal right now. It's a big conversation and it's so incredibly important. I mean, it's just doing this work with even, sans entheogens has changed just so much about the way that I used to worry. I mean, I like worried before and I don't spend too much time there, because I have more trust. So this kind of spiritual relationship that connected to the connectedness to like the land and um so how did I get there? It's kind of a long story. I didn't really grow up in a very like I honor the people and really respect those who have grown up in pretty, harsh or very fundamental, like, this is what we are, this is our religion, like we're, there's nothing else, right? Like I really have a lot of respect and understand that that's a big deal. And it really does support people. But I didn't have that, so I got to really um sit with like what felt the most right. And um at a young age I have some native cousins who were adopted by my mom's aunt, and they were so inspiring to me. We didn't spend too much time together, but I was able to really connect with them, and I have kind of really always been connected to spirit in a way. um like I've seen spirits like all my life. I've seen ghosts all my life. And so I kind of feel like I've had this kind of sense that like something else is going on kind of deal. And, um, as I learned more about, mental health and pathology, patriarchy, colonialism, capitalism, and the way that like the world has been shaped to kind of, suppress anything that's not, major world religions or Eurocentric viewpoints. Like I kind of always put my ability to be with spirit and energies like kind of away. Um, and I think I don't know what clicked, but I was like, I just need to know a little bit more about what's going on um with my abilities. Like why am I so intuitive? Like why do I actually have like precognition that comes true? And that actually happened in a pretty tragic way for me. So it was a big life event kind of deal. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to figure out, like, literally, I'm Italian, so we do have Catholicism in the background. My mom is Scandinavian, and so um, I surrendered to the Viking, exploring Viking lore, and then I went even further beyond Catholicism into like Stregoria, which is like Italian witchcraft, and all of these are nature based religions, right? And I studied um, mythology and literature, and I did some origin story research, and really kind of like really exploring spirituality and a connectedness to nature through origins was kind of really what sealed the deal for me, is kind of like this leveling field of really understanding that, like, pre-dominant world religions, like, we all as human beings had a connection to nature, and we also really had these similar stories about how the world came to be, right? And that facilitated, like, you know like reciprocal trade and stewardship of land and respect for the earth, and like really what I feel in my core in doing the spiritual work is that, like, pre organized religion, maybe even pre agriculture, we had this like sense of connectedness that we don't have anymore. And so I kind of hold really tight to that. And I've tried all to do it through, do it in an intellectual way through research. And then when I really sit with meditation, stillness, quietness, and not try to fix anything, then I can really anchor into that being a truth. That, like love and this interconnectedness is a really huge piece that we're missing. Um, and you can figure it out with entheogens or not. Like, it does take work, right? Um, it's not just entheans, it's not just or entheogens, and it's not just meditation and mindfulness, right? Like, it's real practice, it's real immersion, it's real getting centered and quiet, and also being able to connect, like, with other, right?
Yeah, and how much of that process is, I mean, for people out there maybe don't have your intuitive gifts that are looking to kind of seek, it sounds like you're saying really kind of, yeah, you can do the research, but like focus on dreams and coincidences and synchronicities and sort of intuitions and visions that come up in meditations. So all of these other sort of ways, and it's almost as if the ancestors want to speak to you, but you have to open up to this new book, which isn't in the writing that you see in, a closed textbook, but this different type of book, which is life, right? So maybe
Yeah.
what's that? Sounds like you have a lot of I don't is psi the right word for that? Intuition and premonitions and these types of sort of bigger sort of otherworldly ways of existing in the world. How has that come across for you? For folks that maybe aren't familiar with that sensation or don't have a deep touch to their intuition.
Oh, well, I think that's a lifetime. I try to kind of analyze this and kind of like how I am like like I don't necessarily want to like make what my life experience is like into a product that I can sell. However, like the amount of peace that I experience now, and the amount of turmoil that I have experienced, the amount of trauma, um I've lost like 36 people in like the opioid epidemic and to cancer, and like throughout my life, like in my 40 years, I've like lost somebody every year, and so perpetual grief is real for me. So like I don't really necessarily want to like package my resilience. When you ask me like how does somebody get in more in touch with their intuition, um it really feels like a big question, and it also feels like there's like this special like recipe of trusting and quieting like the mind, and there is like this element of like fear that needs to be kind of either faced or held or looked at, because it's 2025, and like people still really don't have justice, like we still don't really have equity even in like the most developed country in the world. And so it kind of feels scary. In your intro for this podcast, you said like, and even with entheogens, like this kind of has a way of what I'm saying too. Also asks you to change your world view, and that's really can be scary. Because even before you change your worldview, you kind of have to face some of the darker versions of the world that we live in, right? Like, so how do you get more in tune with your intuition? You have to be comfortable with being quiet.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you're not, I think the ancestors want to speak to, I think everyone has a capacity to be in the presence of their own ancestors, and even, relational proximal
Hmm.
ancestors as well. And so not being afraid
Right.
might be like the first step. Being curious. Can I frame it more like, can I lighten it up? Like, let's be being more curious, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
that's the first step. And then, synchronicity starts to happen, and that provides some safety, right, in your experience. And being coachable and getting a coach or a mentor.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I would definitely love to share some of my mentors, like, maybe post on this, because
Hmm.
I'm just like, it's been such a treat. Like, I can't really, I'm not sitting here with you because without them, right?
Hmm.
Like, they've all supported me, and um, actually helped me give myself permission to kind of give voice and be right here. So yeah, I would love to share those folks with you, and you could share them as resources as in the podcast. That'd be great, because that's great too. Having a trusted mentor that's really there to empower you has been really incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I love too. Also, you mentioned curiosity and how important curiosity is. It's this. It's the realization that you don't know everything and that something else might be there. And even if it sounds off to you, like, hey, I'm curious, let's find out what parts of this is new or interesting or something I don't know, or maybe I'll learn something new. But
Yeah.
it's that's that attitude that you really, if you can open up that attitude of curiosity, openness to hearing other stories and perspectives and rethinking things is so critical, especially as these, we're
Mhm.
told that ancestral work doesn't happen, there's no such thing, intuition is just, whatever. But all the ways that we in the sort of mental model, of science and, empirical this that we have science-based blah blah blah, like tapping
Yeah.
into these things that people are like, well, actually, I found that it's been really helpful to explore intuition or synchronicities or dreams or whatever else, entheogens, etc. So I really
Yeah.
try to frame that.
Yeah, and I will say that even when I was speaking to, like, the amount of trauma that I've experienced, right? Like, we've reduced some of people's intuition and their ways of knowing to trauma.
Mm.
Where you're like, "Oh, that you feel like you have that power or that instinct because it's hypervigilance, or you're an empath because you needed to XYZ when you were younger." And it's kind of like, yes and.
Hmm.
Yes and. My experience is fine-tuned the way that I experience the world, right? Um, and I actually often think, like, if I like take a step back and kind of observe my experience, and this last eclipse season was so powerful for that for me. Um, Really interestingly, the laundry list was like really available to me, and I was like, why? Like, I've done so much healing around all of these pieces, and I think it was more or less like, well, here they are, right? Like, these are your gifts. Like, this has happened to you. Like, this is your life. And look at where you are right now. Like, I feel like I'm in a place to celebrate. Um, Dang, I really wish I knew where I was going with that piece.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I mean, I think having the opportunity to connect deeply, to utilize these resources, to tap into the self, all that kind of thing, I think are part of our growth process.
yeah.
And I think as we sort of learn more, as we sort of grow as a community, as these things become more commonplace, as more people are having these conversations with each other, we will be able to tap into our own inner knowings and won't necessarily need to identify just with a traumatic experience or some other experience. But you say like, hey, there's all these ways that we can be in the world, and all of them are giving us information, and just being open to that. You also mentioned earlier something about how we were all connected on this before
Mm,
pre-organized religion time frame, right? And we all had this sort of nature-based connection. That's sort of what I was also exploring with my ancestor in Finland and looking at, okay, Finnish people actually come from northern Siberia, which is closer to Mongolia. So Finnish is actually closer to Mongolia than it is to European in terms of genetic structure, but also the stories and the languages and the cosmologies. And as you're saying, like all these cosmologies have these similarities, the origin stories of the earth and all that other kind of thing. There might be different aspects, whether one is, male or female, or, the sky or the earth, or, all these different types of things, kind of can be different, but there is sort of this basis that there's something more than us.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, so in your exploration, and also I'm always fascinated personally, what was, was the organized religion to remove the power from folks that were getting this direct connection? Like what happened to this? What was that time frame where organized religion came in and it had like this edict to basically just destroy everything that was nature based as much as possible? And then now we all feel disconnected, even though, as you're saying, we have this deep connection through nature throughout the world.
Yeah, yeah, like I don't know. I mean, I don't want to like exist where I'm like, "Oh, organized religion," you know? Um, because I don't know if I really I don't know. Do I think it was to control like the masses to get more workers? Like maybe, probably. I don't have that answer because I didn't actually exist back then. And I do know like some of the stories. Man, I really wish I was better with names. I'm sorry. There's this really amazing historian who does talk about like actual Roman mythology, and um what he shared with the folks that worship Diana, and how there was like a huge campaign for Roman soldiers to kind of embrace the people of the forest, like the people who lived outside of the city, and so that they could get their resources. So like I mean that's really the story. It's like resources, power and control. Why did it happen? Um, I am not sure, and I'm super curious about that too. I would love to spend some more time in maybe pre with some of the history that's like pre-American colonialism, and just understand some of the lore, more of the indigenous North American lore around it, before I would speak to it. And then obviously I wouldn't share that story because those are not my people, or that's not my ancestry. Um, but I think that I recently uh saw somebody share on Instagram that was like, we didn't need the dark for this. Like we don't need the dark to be able to have joy. Like why do we have to have this conversation? Like, and I don't know if I fully agree with that. I think that it is about balance, right? I think that we exist on this planet to take care of it, and I think we forgot that. I think you know um I think we forgot it in this kind of special way that we needed to kind of like get really big for our britches over like 5, 6,000 years, so that we could be here having this conversation now. Like, how powerful is that we're having this conversation right now, talking about restoring our roots? Going back to this piece of like, how do you get to your intuition? Like, how do you kind of decondition from this imperial power grab that we've all kind of been, like, this is fine. It's okay. This is happening to you. How do we decondition and get brave enough to be like, wait a minute, you know, hold on. This isn't how we have always been. Cause we're talking about like, what, 60,000 years of like human existence on the planet as stewards of, like, that's the history. Yeah. It's like 60,000 Homo sapien species, 60,000 years.
Yeah, I'm not sure in those numbers. Rachel, do you know the answer to that? Right.
Or
Yeah, I mean,
right,
if you look at like the potential destruction of ancient civilizations over time, and et cetera,
right.
et cetera. You look at these old
Mhm.
pyramids or anything, and all that kind of stuff's happening. And they've recently, just as a side note, just because I'm curious about this too, is like they talked about it for like a week. It was exciting news for a week, and then everyone just kind of shut up about it, which is like, oh, actually, underneath the pyramids, there are these. 112-story buildings, like, cylindrical hollow tubes that lead to this other big platform of rock that somehow got basically,
Wow.
because I think it was like, what is it, it's 1,000 meters or something like that. So that's about the equivalent of like a hundred-story building or whatever. And then these big stones underneath it. But oh, that's just whatever. They were just, people with chisels back in the old days doing their thing, right? Yeah. So what is that? What is that when you start thinking about like, okay, maybe there are some even more ancient than we realize, things, and then they've just been kind of like washed over, because how does that happen,
Yeah, yeah, right. Totally. Like this lens of curiosity, like I think what we know, right? I don't know that we exist in as humans just to really totally what do you call it? Like I don't think that like all humans are trying to get the like wool over our eyes kind of thing. I just don't know that that's like the way that we're actually really fundamentally programmed. I don't think that when you like look at natural disasters, like people are actually, I think they're more hardwired to help and support, and I like we are like, you know 9 billion, going on 9 billion humans, like that's how we got here, is the support and the help, right? Like to this scale of humanity, right? Like
I
we're
so agree with that. I feel like human nature is more likely to help than what has been said, like, oh, we're going to do this and we fight. Like, no, we get put into situations where that happens. I think our natural instinct is to, help each other as our like brothers and sisters on this planet, right?
Yes. Yes. I really, really feel that. And I think like when we're finding things like, 100 feet, potentially like a skyscraper underneath the ground, we're just like, oh, well, we didn't know that yet,
hmm
you know? I totally believe that we definitely like live with dragons. I mean, I don't know why. I don't know if it's just me being like holding on to some, fantasy. Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm saying like we don't know everything. Like we don't know what's in the ocean.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Ooh, the ocean. Ugh. We don't know what's in the ocean.
Yeah, and
So,
even in underground, I mean, they're constantly like finding these underground caverns and caves, and even in the underground, there's the
yeah.
ocean we don't know about. We haven't explored in the inner earth either, in terms of like different places people can go. Yeah, there's just so much, and we're so busy like, figuring out like, well, we have to measure it in order for it to exist. And then again, that knocks the curiosity out, because you're like, oh, well, if it's unmeasurable, then I can't be curious about it because it doesn't exist according to our worldview, But
Yeah.
there's so much interesting things to figure out yet still. And you look at these ancient stories, why did these ancient stories talk about dragons? Why do these ancient stories talk about magic? Why do these ancient stories talk about spirit and UFOs and all this weird stuff that's going on? And like you hear, like you say, this sort of this consistent framing across cultures all across the planet. Some big flood that happened, some this, that, some big sort of asteroid came, all the things. So yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be really interesting to be said about, oral stories, oral traditions. Again, looking at my Finnish ancestry, that was a big part of the way that communication was happening, is through these bardic traditions. Bards sing the songs,
Mhm.
people, and then somebody came and took all those songs and put them together for the sort of epic poem they call it, sort of this Finnish poem. But
Right.
basically all these different ways of looking at, and it's all again based on nature. What's the magic of nature? What's the magic of wind? What's the magic of the trees? Like, how are they
Mhm.
connecting with us? What can we learn from them? And and even seeing them as ancestors. We were talking in our episode last time about the different types of ancestors we have, and we sort of
Mm.
horizontal, which would be kind of like within our sort of cultural context. There's the vertical, which is like our ancestors through our lineage, but then there's like
Yeah.
spiritual realms, spiritual ancestors, if you will. There's
Mhm.
nature ancestors, trees that lived in places before, or animals that lived in places, and herbs that we didn't know about. I'm sure with your, herbal medicine, was there anything that you found that been like, hey, wow, this is an herb that was really powerful back in the day, but nobody really knows about it or went extinct? There's even
Mm.
herbal ancestors that we aren't familiar with, I imagine, and probably had these different relationships with. Oh, if you cook this, or if you put it in combination with this thing, it does this other thing. Yeah, so tell
Yeah.
me about what you learned in terms of herbal ancestry, and then maybe if you want to jump in from there to go into a little bit about, you're in a place like Alaska where you are in nature. Do you think that helps also provide opportunities for that intuition to come out, for that curiosity to come out, because you're in a space that's so, it's hard to deny that nature is everywhere around you. Sometimes when you're in a city, you forget, like, oh, okay, there's only 3 trees on the street or whatever that are unfortunately, having troubles with, the skylights and everything like that, or
Yeah.
whatever. But here you are in a place, just from looking around from your camera here and there, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about herbal medicine, and then also kind of the space of being in an incredibly natural location like Alaska.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for asking about that. Yeah, actually right behind me is it needs to grow a little bit more. I don't know if you can see this guy. Yeah, this plant right here. Um that plant was one that I met here, and I was like, learning about the landscape, and it's not in any of my books that I have about the landscape here. And I kept pulling it like a weed, and I was like, but I was like, come on. And it was like, kept coming back and kept coming back. And I was like, okay, like, who are you? Like, what are you? And so then I used the phone, I used my internet, all good old Google, because it wasn't in any of my books. And it was like, I am motherwort and I love you. Mugwort, actually. It's um Artemisia montana, and it's like it only grew in my yard. I don't have it anywhere else in my like forest here. I live on 5 acres, and we got into this really sweet spot where they were developing this 40-acre homestead, and a bunch of our friends live on 5 acres, like all around us. So um what have I learned about living here? I mean, has this place given me permission to be a little bit softer, a little bit more sturdy? Yeah, definitely, 100%. um do you have better access to your intuition? I mean, I could even speak to the science of it in a measurable, quantifiable way, that yes, being out closer to nature is better for your body. Like, science can measure that. Um, and I think it's really actually super important for people to remember that. Like, getting into nature, being with nature is really, really important. Now, as like a scientist, like as an occupational therapy doctoral student, like, it's the other piece is like, we're not conditioned to nature. Like, I remember like I was born in the Bronx and I lived in Los Angeles, and then I moved to New Jersey, which was like kind of suburban but not really at all, actually. More like urban sprawl. When I took off and like left my home and went on the road, like, I had to be very like, oh my god, bugs, oh my god, like, this was when I was a teenager, and I remember having to recondition myself to being in connection with nature, and like becoming comfortable with like being wet, and like being comfortable with the grass, and being comfortable with walking around with those shoes on. So like, it's a process to be able to be available to be in this much nature, because I am really out here. Like, my house is right here, but like all around me is, 40, 50 acres. I could probably yell if I was like in trouble and a neighbor might hear me. Maybe,
Uh,
maybe.
and then, so I know mugwort is good for dreams and other types of things. Is there other plants that you have in the area, or maybe speak a little bit more about mugwort, if you will?
Yeah, I would love to speak a little bit more about mugwort. Thanks for getting me back on track. So mugwort, so being with mugwort was really, really special for me. So it is wonderful for dreams. Yep. We I don't um I don't have my kiddo take it internally, but he will put it under his pillow, and it supports dream work for him. He struggles a little bit with nightmares and night terrors, which we haven't really kind of nailed that down yet, but that's an interesting thing to experience as a parent. If any parents out there have ever experienced it, I would love more support, because it's really actually kind of scary. But mugwort is super helpful. Um, I've been having immune system issues. Mugwort is incredible for immune system. So using it as a foot bath. But my favorite thing to do with it is actually like trance work. And like just simply smudging with it and meditating. And I have been using it every year. I smudge my garden with it. I work with the seasonal, like, um Beltane and equinox seasonal work, and It puts me in touch with like fairies. And this feels weird to say, but I'm just gonna say it. I and what I mean by that is like the energy of like the high vibe and the mystery of the forest, right? Like, like I'm a sound mind, right? Like, and even if I did see fairies, like you couldn't tell me that I don't see fairies. But mugwort is so fun. Like it really lightens the load. Like I will do ceremony with children and like we sing and we play and it's just such a really wonderful celebratory herb, even in the way that it also like really cranks your immune system and like it's like cleansing, it's uplifting. And it's an herb that I never really worked with. But going into like my like understanding my ancestry, like my Norse ancestors, they did work with
Mm.
mugwort, right? Like the boreal forest is where my ancestors came from, and so kind of connecting really deeply with the boreal forest, the northern forest, like understanding how much medicine is actually out here. Like there's not too many things that aren't medicine in my yard. Um, and in most yards, like I think people, what we call a weed is medicine almost all the
Right,
time.
right. What do they
Yeah.
say? A difference between a weed and a flower is perspective, or a weed and
Hmm.
perspective, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like there's so much medicine in our yards. Like even in, places like California. Oh man, jasmine, the
Yeah.
jasmine that grows out there, so beautiful.
Yeah, it's the smell is intoxicating. We have a lot of that growing around here, star jasmine, but for botanists in the area, they're like, oh, this is invasive and blah blah blah. But
Hmm.
believe it or not, I don't know if you know this, we might have talked about this before, but it's not a lot, but it's enough to make notice is that it actually has ibogaine in it, star jasmine.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Interesting.
So these tiny, delicate, little, beautifully smelling flowers have, psychoactive substances in it that, again, like you say, we walk around and don't even realize that all these plants around us that have these medicinal, psychoactive, emotionally,
Hmm.
helpful, even aesthetic, or smell-oriented
And
type of
or
benefits. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're the I've been playing around with part of my intuitive practices to be with just the plants. And I have an invasive species in my garden that I'm at war with right now, which feels fundamentally wrong to me.
yeah. Right.
And I had, it's like the synchronicity, like there's so many other practitioners in town, and so it's really nice to be able to collaborate and get perspective on, what does this plant mean to the garden? Like instead of being like, oh, this is a plant I need to go to war with, like what is it saying? What's it saying about the soil? What's it saying about the landscape? What um is it expressing a need? And so I don't have a lot of answers for that yet, but it's so interesting to like be able to apply that lens of curiosity is like, okay, well, and make a just decision based on that curiosity. Do I want to control the thing, or do I want to, like, what's my angle here? Do I want to learn more, or do I want to just control the thing?
Right.
Right.
Nature
Uh,
does feel like it's trying to speak to us through these, this invasive species, like you said, like, okay, what's the soil telling us? What's the environment telling us? I love the people that are also using it as like, they're doing invasive species medicinals
mm-hmm.
or medicinals around the invasive species. So they're helping to, build a relationship with them, in a way, if you want to talk about that, just like, finding a different way to connect with this thing that we might be like, oh, this thing is, coming into our garden and invasive, but at the same time, okay, wait, I don't know exactly what your plant is, but what is it? What is it? Is it medicinal? Can it be medicinal? Can it be helpful? Like the star jasmine, can it be something we
Right.
don't throw away, but that we actually like start to like cultivate something with? Uh,
Yeah. Oh, I see.
yeah, yeah, we'll get that in a second.
Cool.
But yeah, so I think are there other? I mean, you were talking a little bit earlier about and again, you seemed uh, um, shy or reserved to talk about the essence of these beings that are maybe existing throughout the fairies, or the leprechauns, or the menehune as they have in Hawaii. Is there an Alaska version of
Oh, the
these sort of
Mentorship.
beings? Like
Um,
what is sort of common within the iconography of the Alaskan traditions?
oh, that would be I don't know that I would feel super comfortable sharing like, Alaskan tradition. There's a lot of lore in Alaska, and it's very oral based, like oral traditions.
Mhm.
Um am I shy? I think I am shy because like there's definitely part of me that has the reverence that feels kind of still like an outsider to living in Alaska, and I think someday I'll have some peace with that, but um I just think I am just shy, like speaking to like, and also, I don't know, fairy magic, maybe it's fairy magic, like, at play here because I've spent
Okay.
2 days in the forest and, um, little mischief makers and
Yeah,
like
right.
really, really challenging people's concepts of like, what is reality? Like, what is reality?
Good question.
You know?
We start the conversation again, starting at point A. What is reality? Hey, welcome to the Restoring Our Roots podcast with Savannah. Today we're going to talk about what is reality.
What is reality? I mean, I have so much, like, I started this doctoral program, and it feels like such an expansive space for me, which I didn't really realize that was like I could do that, like I could expand more. So like I'm kind of on this like cliff and getting ready to like jump off into like understanding the world even in a broader way, which feels like I just really highly recommend that, like, people who want to learn about themselves, who want to learn about their ancestry, like, you know, I did grow up with like a very Italian culture. So like I do know that I was Italian. My mom did some ancestry work, some DNA ancestry work. She didn't realize she was like Scandinavian. But it's like, follow those threads for yourself.
Mhm.
Like you never really know where they can take you, and then like be brave because it's scary,
Mhm.
like no, it's not about being fearless, like it's about being brave and
Right.
like really simple virtues, right? Like I think that as adults we need to kind of relearn how to like hold and harness these like really simple like elements of ourselves that are like, what is joy, what is fear, what is, and being able to play with those and sit with them. And that's kind of what brought me here. What makes me feel like more expansive is just simply that. It's like asking simple questions,
Yeah, right.
you
Exactly.
know,
Yeah.
like what is reality?
What is really, that's a simple one. It's an easy one. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much. And I know, we're getting close to sort of wrapping up here, but I do know you're doing a lot of great work out there also with the Homer Decrim Nature team. And so I know that a lot of folks out there, if anyone's watching this and you know anyone in Homer or in the area itself, please reach out to Savannah, and we'll put some
Yes, please.
information later in terms of how to sort of connect with you. I know we
Please.
have one question from Rachel. We'll do that real quick, and then we'll have some final comments.
What's
Yeah.
up, Rachel?
Hey, so I have a question. I got a lot of we got a lot new followers on this show. So, and
Oh,
a lot of
fun.
people, a lot of hearts in the
Great.
chat. But my question was because you mentioned dragons, and I've been reading this novel called Mistress of Dragons, and it's by this writer who wrote this old RPG game back in the day. But in it, there's a passage about how dragons, the way they speak to people is not like language. They speak in texture and color and song and music, and so usually it drives humans mad. That's why they don't do it. So, when you were talking about dragons, I was like, oh, like there are dragons. They can't speak to most people because we're not at a level to catch the language. So I was just wondering, Savannah, if you've had any like experiences like that where you get because I feel the intuition off you like a like a
Oh,
huge way. So I wonder if you have any personal stories about interfacing with like that other world in like a way that's not like I'm a dancer, so I feel like that's how I get that message. So there's different ways in which people have that tuning fork to how those messages come through. So yeah, when you were saying the dragons thing, I thought of that passage and I was just thinking about like any kind of stories to share about that.
that's huge. That's a big question. I have very direct experience with dragons in the last year.
Oh my.
Yeah. Actually, in my last ceremony, like I had a dragon appear and it like totally it was with me and I really struggled until I was like, I'm dancing. Like I'm dancing, I'm singing, I'm using my voice like and yeah, like I loved to do that, right? Like that moves energy for me too and like it doesn't always have words. But that experience itself, that makes so much sense. Thank you for sharing that passage with me because I was like, what was it the dragon? Really? Like,
It's
did
just
that
how they
happen?
speak to
Like,
you, and then they're just like but in the passage it says they're like, well, we don't talk to humans very often because they usually go crazy. So we
yeah,
save it for when they can
I had
receive
a
it.
really hard time. I think it was trying to tell me I was like at the beginning of something and it came with me through that experience and I had a lot of friction with that experience and like it wasn't until I was like I can't do this anymore then that the dragon then was like okay, I'm done. Bye.
Good job.
Yeah. So that was
Oh my
it.
gosh, I
That's
love that. I got full body tingles
full,
when you said that.
yes,
So
full
that was
circle.
ooh,
Oh, thanks for
amazing.
sharing.
Oh, amazing. Thanks for being a guest. That was great.
Oh,
All right, and that was it for me. Thanks for that conversation, Savannah.
yeah.
Great.
Definitely dance, definitely song, definitely texture, definitely color. Yeah.
Yeah, people forget about the textures in terms of like, the other, some of these otherworldly experiences and like how that can give you so much more information sometimes than words or other things like that. Just the feel, like what is this texture? What does this smell like? What is the color like? Like all that kind of stuff. So maybe that's this other
Hmm.
world using language in a different way for us. So yeah, thank you for both
Yeah.
that. Yeah, so really awesome having this conversation with Savannah. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that I know we are going to talk about salmon runs and all these other kinds of things at the beginning, and we just went off in all different directions. Next time we have you on, we're just going to talk about what is the nature of reality and all of the other beings that exist out there because that's
Oh my,
a fun conversation to
Just
be
cut
had.
right to the point.
sure.
Who are
Cut
we?
right
What
to the
is
point.
this?
Exactly.
Totally, totally. What is
Um, but
reality?
but no, I mean, is there anything that you'd like to sort of shout out to the audience or let them know, or maybe things to consider, or anything that we didn't touch on that you'd like to cover?
No, I really love the opportunity to like like stay curious. We don't really know all the answers about literally like anything. And so that's maddening and it can be really hard, but like staying curious is like the antidote to ambiguity and then if you can like take it the next step further and be like, "Ooh, ambiguity, hey," right? Like and being able to sit with this like unknown, wow, powerhouse. That's um really been a huge part of my process, my learning, my understanding, my own personal like maturation and like I feel like that is like the essence of what entheogens have been able to give me over time. Connection into community supports me and then therefore I give you that. Like if you can make peace with ambiguity and stay curious in your life. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So how can people reach out to you if someone wants to contact you, talk some more about this stuff, somebody wants to help you out with occupational therapy or be one of your clients, or how does somebody connect with you for Dnhomer?
Oh, Dnhomer. We can share the information in like the chat. There is an email list. Please, if you're local, please give us a shout out. We are a very responsibly paced project, and we're really building relationships with our um, community members and our city council, and that's been really a fun journey to get to know those folks. And um, so there's an email that you can send shout out to our friend Lindsay and Jarena. They're amazing. They work the email there and we'll get in touch with you and let you know what's going on. Do some trivia nights. Those have been really awesome too. I wish we could have had some time to talk about that because
Yeah,
the
so maybe we have a minute or two if you want to just jump on that real quick. I know you were doing that as part of some of your events out there, but
yeah, those are really, really, really beautiful. Like those gave us an opportunity to really build rapport with like the crowd and we even brought out like medical professionals because like trivia night really is like you never know who's going to show up.
mhm.
So it was really cool. It was really cool to write the questions. And I would love for any of the DN teams to like hit me up. I would be happy to share the questions if you thought trivia night would be like good in your community, because it was really great. It was really fun. People learned a lot, and it was like really challenging, and I thought that was fun.
Mhm.
So yeah, you guys can send me an email. That'll be in the details, and I can get that over to you. Or um,
Yeah, it'd be great even to have you on maybe one of our roundtable events where we do like skill shares occasionally. And so maybe the skill share is for, because everyone in these different communities like, what kind of events can we throw? And I think
yeah,
it's so great because you're automatically engaging people. There's participation. People are excited. Everyone wants to be the smartest person in the room, kind of thing, trivia, kind of
yeah,
style. And
totally.
also like, okay, oh, I heard this little piece of knowledge I didn't know before. So it's a great way to get those little snippets of knowledge that stay with you forever. So that would be something that'd be really fun for a roundtable. Maybe if you want to do a little skill share about like, how to put these together and, how to
Cool.
get involved with that.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love to be that. Love to be
Great,
there for that. Cool.
great, great. Yeah, and then how else? So they got the Decriminalize Nature Humboldt stuff. Anything exciting going on with the organizational therapy or any way you can get in if anyone wants to contact you regarding that kind of stuff? What is organizational therapy for people that don't know? That is
Oh, occupational therapy.
occupational therapy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks for asking. We actually intentionally work on an elevator pitch because people are so confused about what occupational therapy is. um, but if you've had any parents who, elderly parents who've had injuries, or if you've had know anybody who's had any like traumatic brain injuries, oftentimes they work in physical rehab with occupational therapists to kind of get themselves back to their daily life. The way that I love to think about occupational therapy is kind of like this like transition facilitator, right? Like you probably see an occupational therapist after you've been through something really hard and you want to kind of, reevaluate or recenter or adapt or try on new lifestyles, new activities to in your daily living. And so like, whether it's physical injury or mental health or substance use, kind of taking your life back is an occupational therapist's job, essentially. Um, and having someone to support you. And I was drawn to the field because an occupational therapist did a TED talk about, imagine that your clinical session looks like playing Uno and getting to know somebody. Like that's our first session together, was like, uh, everyone else tried to get a profile or an understanding about this person. And when I showed up with my deck of cards and sat with this person, they gave me X, Y, and Z, like some really critical pieces. And so um, I look forward to working in clinical settings where like I get to provide people with connection and build rapport and um, help them find meaning in their lives. And so that's where I'm at. I'm in the learning process again, being curious. Um, there's a lot of stuff I don't know. Where I'll go with my occupational therapy is one of them. Um, so I'm exploring that, and it's been really wonderful to be in that lens and be back in school, be in grad school. I'm a grad school student. It's kind of wild at 40.
Hey, nothing wrong with that, You get some life experience, then you can go back in and sort of apply that life experience into the books again. I think that's a much more solid way to go about doing it. That's what for my PhD, same thing. I spent a lot of time outside of that world and then went back into it, and I lost some writing skills in the process, of course, is like, you forget about that. But the life wisdom that thing you can apply to the stuff that you're learning in your books is yeah, you can't beat that. So
Yeah, really. It's really true. Yeah. And I highly recommend like academia. I think I needed to like um reconcile with like academia and some systems level inequities to be able to say like I'm a grad student now and still and be okay with that. I think I'm looking forward to subversively challenging the system with the doctoral degree.
yeah, there you go. That's right. Get your seat at the table and then start tearing it up, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Wonderful, wonderful. But thank you so much for Savannah for taking some time out of your Mother's Day on a beautiful Alaska day out there to share some stories
Yeah.
with us and talk about all the fun things, whether it be on this side of the realm or the other side of the realm. It was really great to hear your chat, and I look forward to having another conversation in the future, and also bringing you back onto a roundtable with us so we can share a little bit with the Decrim Nature national and all the teams all across the U.S. Again, remember anyone, if you're in home area, reach out to Savannah, start getting those trivia games going or help to pass some policy. As Savanna mentioned, it is a process of building relationships, and I think that's so important both in the community and in the city council. So thank you for doing all that hard work out there and for keeping it going up there.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Rachel, it's so nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Some synchronistic magic today with that.
Yeah, there had to be. Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you, Savannah. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Our normal schedule is usually going live every 2 weeks, but actually we will be having our next podcast next Sunday again. I'll be gone for the end of May, early June. So our next podcast will be Sunday, March 8th or May 18th at 9 a.m. And this is going to be with Jack Gorslin, who's an independent journalist out of Massachusetts, who's doing some really interesting work and some breaking some interesting stories regarding the psychedelic ecosystem. So that's pretty great. Keep an eye out. I'm assuming Rachel will have this episode out on all the Spotify or in the iHeart and the Apple podcast next Sunday.
Oh yes, all channels.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All channels then. So Savannah, keep an eye out for that as well. And we'll be doing some more promos of this in the near future as well. So thank you for being here again. Thank you, Rachel. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. Until next time, tune in, stay rooted, and let's grow together. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Plant power to the people. Plant power to the people. Where you dream is where I'll meet you.